Here's the question that often gets asked when it comes to raised beds. What kind of materials should I use to build my bed with, or should I just go ahead and buy one that's already built? Well, the answer is it comes down to 4 different things. What is your budget for this project? What do you want it to look like in your garden? How much time do you personally want to put into building one? And how long do you want it to last? Hi, I'm Carol from Almost 2 Acres. Today we're going to talk about the construction materials for building raised beds, as well as the cost, and then we'll talk about whether you should put the time into building your own raised beds or perhaps buy a prefabricated kit.
Welcome back to the Raised Bed series. We've covered why raised beds make sense in a permaculture and cottage garden context, and in video 2, we worked through the fun part: layout, paths, shapes, and making the design feel intentional. Today we're talking materials and money, and by the end of this video, you'll have enough information to make a decision that fits your actual life, not just a theoretical perfect garden. Let's start with an overview of the materials and then get into the cost breakdown, because those two things are connected. Wood is where most people start, and it makes sense. It's familiar, it's workable with basic tools, and in a cottage garden setting, there's genuinely something beautiful about the warmth of natural timber against lush planting. The species of wood you choose matters enormously. Cedar and redwood are the gold standard because they contain natural oils that resist rot without any added treatment. A well-built cedar bed in good conditions can last 15 to 20 years or more. Douglas fir and untreated pine will work and are cheaper up front, but realistically, you're looking at 5 to 10 years before you see significant degradation at the soil line, especially in wet climates. That shorter lifespan has a real cost implication that we'll come back to. Hardwoods like oak and chestnut land somewhere in the middle, very durable, sometimes locally available, but often at a higher price point. The treated lumber question comes up constantly, and it's worth addressing directly. Modern pressure-treated lumber in most countries now uses copper-based preservatives rather than the older arsenic-based treatments. Current university extension research suggests that copper leaching into garden soil from modern treated wood is minimal for most food crops. That said, it's a personal call. I'd be more cautious with treated wood in beds growing root vegetables and leafy greens close to the soil edges, and less concerned for fruiting crops growing above ground. One option that fits beautifully with the permaculture ethic is reclaimed wood, salvaged fence posts, old timber beams, even railway sleepers, if you can confirm they haven't been treated with creosote. This is permaculture's use what you have approach at its best and can give a garden extraordinary character. Corrugated galvanized steel and Corten steel beds have genuinely earned their popularity. They look sleek and modern. Corten in particular develops a beautiful rust patina over time that, surprisingly, sits quite well in cottage and naturalistic garden settings. Most importantly, a quality metal bed is essentially a one-time purchase. Research from Virginia Tech's Extension Service suggests that steel at 14 gauge thickness or better could potentially last 35 to 50 years before any perforation occurs. That's a very long-term investment. The practical considerations are real, though. Metal conducts heat, which means the soil near the edges of a metal bed warms quickly in spring, genuinely useful for getting a jump on the season. But in very hot summers, the soil near the walls can reach temperatures that stress plant roots. Lining the inside with cardboard or burlap before you fill the bed buffers that temperature swing considerably, and you'll find that metal beds dry out faster than wood, so factor that into your watering approach. One important note if you're purchasing metal beds: quality varies enormously. Look for Lu zinc or zinc aluminum magnesium coated steel with food-safe powder coating and stainless hardware. The budget end of the metal garden bed market cuts corners on exactly these things, and a poorly coated bed can start rusting through from the inside in a matter of years. Stone and brick are the most permanent materials and the ones that most authentically evoke the classic kitchen garden and cottage aesthetic. A bed built from stacked local stone or old brick really looks like it belongs, like it's been part of the landscape for generations. And in terms of longevity, there is no practical ceiling. Stone and brick built well will outlast everything else we're discussing today, including the gardener. The trade-offs are weight, cost, and commitment. These beds are labor-intensive to construct, significantly heavier to work with, and if you change your mind about the layout later, you can't pick them up and move them the way you can timber or metal. I'd suggest stone and brick are best reserved for the permanent structural beds, the ones that anchor your design and that you're confident about for the long term. Dry stacked stone has an added benefit from a permaculture perspective. The gaps between the stones become wildlife habitat. Beneficial insects, small lizards, and spiders will all take up residence in a dry stone wall, and they'll work on your behalf throughout the growing season. Concrete blocks are probably the most underestimated material in this whole conversation, and I want to make sure they get a fair hearing. What most people picture when they hear concrete blocks is something utilitarian and unattractive, the kind of thing you'd see in a commercial setting. And yes, a standard gray block stacked without any thought does look pretty plain, but the reality is that concrete blocks are available in a range of sizes, shapes, and finishes. Retaining wall blocks are designed to look like natural stone, and some of them do a convincing job of it. You can also paint or stucco standard blocks, add a decorative cap block along the top edge, or arrange them creatively, zigzag patterns, stepped layers, even stacked to create small planters in the hollow cores of each block. From a practical standpoint, the advantages are substantial. Concrete blocks don't rot, don't warp, aren't affected by moisture the way wood is, and according to Virginia Tech's extension research, can last well over 100 years. They are also excellent for accessibility. A two-layer bed sits at a comfortable working height, and the flat top of a capped block wall provides a stable surface to sit on while you work, which is valuable for gardeners with mobility considerations. Concrete blocks also create real thermal mass. They absorb heat from the sun during the day and release it slowly overnight. This extends your growing season at both ends and provides a more stable microclimate for young plants, especially useful in areas with temperature swings between day and night. Two things you should be aware of. First, if you're stacking more than about 2 layers high without mortar, the structure can become less stable in areas with heavy rain, frost heave, or any slope. For taller beds, either use construction adhesive between layers or consult with someone experienced in dry stack masonry for your specific site conditions. Second, if you're sourcing blocks from an older building or demolition, be cautious. Older cinder blocks, the genuine article, made from coal ash rather than concrete, can contain substances you don't want near a food garden. New concrete masonry units from any major hardware store are made from concrete and are safe for food gardens, but do check with the retailer if you're uncertain. And finally, the option of no frame at all. A raised ground bed is simply a mound of improved soil built above the surrounding grade, held in place by its own structure and the roots and mulch that develop over time. The edges are typically sloped gently and can be planted with low ground covers or herbs to stabilize them. These are the least expensive option by a considerable margin. If you're working with a tighter budget or you want to establish a growing area quickly, a no-frame bed built on top of sheet mulch, cardboard laid directly over grass or weeds, filled with compost and a good soil mix is a completely legitimate approach that fits naturally with permaculture's use what you have principles. The limitations are that they tend to be shallower than frame beds, they need more regular maintenance to hold their shape over the years, and they don't offer the same accessibility that a taller frame bed provides. Now, let's talk numbers, because the material comparison only tells part of the story when you don't factor in what each option actually costs and how long it lasts. I want to give you some realistic ballpark figures for a standard 4-foot by 8-foot bed at about 12 inches high, which is one of the most common sizes. These are approximate 2025 figures. Your local prices will vary, but the proportions will hold. DIY pine or fir. This is your lowest cost DIY option. Materials will run somewhere in the range of $30 to $60, depending on lumber prices in your area. I must mention that these untreated options can start showing real degradation within 3 to 5 years in wet conditions. You may be rebuilding this bed sooner than you expect. DIY cedar. The step up in longevity is significant. Cedar typically runs $150 to $250 in materials for the same 4 by 8 footprint and you're looking at 15 to 20 years or more of useful life. When you spread that cost over the lifespan, cedar is often better value than the upfront price suggests. Concrete blocks DIY. This is where things look good from a value perspective. A 4x8 bed at 1 course high, about 8 inches, uses roughly 28 standard concrete blocks. At roughly $150 to $250 per block, depending on your location, that's $42 to $70 in materials. 2 courses high, you're looking at $85 to $140. Add a bag or two of adhesive if you want to bond the courses, and you're still under $160 for a very solid, very long-lived structure. For a more decorative retaining wall block, prices go up, but so does the finished look. The key point: concrete block beds can last a literal lifetime, which makes the cost per year over time extremely favorable. Metal raised bed kits. Pre-made metal kits from quality brands like Vigo Garden or Vajega typically run $150 to $400 for a standard bed, depending on size and brand. Budget metal kits start lower, but the quality of coating and hardware varies considerably. This is a case where it really pays to research what you're buying. Over a lifespan of 20 plus years, a quality metal kit is excellent value. Stone or brick. This is the most variable category and the most labor intensive. If you're sourcing reclaimed stone or brick locally, material costs can be quite low. Purchased new, natural stone in particular can be expensive, $200 to $500 or more for a single bed, depending on your region and the stone type. Factor in significant time if you're doing it yourself, or professional labor costs if you're not. Raised ground, no frame. Essentially the cost of the soil and compost to fill the mound, which brings us to a reminder that whatever material you choose for the frame, the soil mix is often the bigger expense in the whole project. Budget for it. The bottom line: there's no universally cheap option when you factor in lifespan. A $50 pine bed that needs replacing in 5 years costs more over 20 years than a $140 concrete block bed that you never have to rebuild. So which is right for you? The right answer really does depend on your situation. The case for DIY. If you want complete control over size and shape, DIY wins by default. You can build to whatever dimensions suit your space and layout, which kits generally can't match. If you're working with a non-standard space, an unusual height requirement, or you want a specific material like a reclaimed timber that no kit is going to give you, DIY is the path. DIY can also be more economical, especially for concrete blocks and for wood, where the material cost is low and no manufacturing margin is baked in. And there's real satisfaction in building something yourself that you then grow food in for years. The realistic check. DIY requires time, basic tools, some physical capability, and at least a little confidence with measurements and basic construction. It's not technically difficult, but it's also not zero effort. Pre-made kits have improved in quality and range over the last several years. Metal kits offer excellent durability, a polished finished look straight out of the box, and assembly that typically requires no tools beyond what's in the package. There's also a quality consistency argument. When you buy from a reputable brand, you know the gauge of steel, the type of coating, and the hardware quality. If you would like to have a look at quality raised bed garden kits, my affiliate links are in the description. Entry-level kits in wood and composite materials start surprisingly low. Some interlocking composite kits begin around $45 and go up from there. The key to buying metal kits from quality brands is to research the specific product, read reviews, look for warranty information, and check what the coating and hardware specifications actually are before you buy. Be skeptical of extremely cheap metal kits. Thin gauge steel with not enough coating will rust from the inside out, and a bed that fails after 3 years at a bargain price was not actually a bargain. Think about how permanent you want the investment to feel and how much time and physical effort you want to put into building rather than gardening. And think about what's going to look right in your specific space.
In the next video, we're going to talk about the soil that goes in the raised beds, because you can build the most beautiful system or buy a prefabricated kit that looks great, but if you don't have the right soil, you're still not going to grow much. Hey, thanks for joining me. Don't forget to watch the rest of the Raised Bed Garden series. It's getting kind of long, but it's going to teach you a lot. And then comment on this video as well as subscribing. I would love to hear from you, and it helps my channel if you comment. Until next time, let's get planning to start planting.